back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey, man, this time we're going to do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everything going out there? Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Of course, I am Mike M3 Rosansky coming to you on this Monday, the 27th day of February here in 2023. Hope you all had a great weekend. Hope you all had a fun, relaxing, happy, healthy week as we get through this winter time here and onto more pleasant times in not just the sports calendar, but the calendar in general, whether it be NCAA tournament coming up in the next couple of weeks. We've got baseball coming back, and hell, baseball hasn't even truly started yet. You're only about 3 spring training games in, and people already have complaints. I'll get to some thoughts on that in a little while, as well as some things that are going on in the NFL, because we're just 2 short weeks away from the new league year starting. But the NBA came back from its All-Star break this past week, and of course there's always plenty of things to talk about in the NBA, but there's always that one team, even when they're out of it or not considered a championship favorite, that is always on the tips of people's tongues, that is always drawing the headlines. And that would, of course, be the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, I do think LeBron James kind of went over the top in some of his comments last week, and this is part of the reason why at times LeBron can drive some people nuts with some of the things that he said, when he said that the final 23 games of the Lakers season are the most important of his career for a regular season. Kind of asinine when you consider we're talking about the league's all-time scoring leader here, multiple-time MVP. He's done everything you could accomplish in this sport. Anything after this is just cherry on top of the cake here. His legacy is set in stone. There's really nothing he could do that would truly diminish it at this point. But in a way, I can understand where he's coming at when you consider last year was a year that LeBron James has not experienced in a long time. Last year was a year where I don't want to say his basketball reality was starting to set in, or that he was just caught off guard by, but it was the first time in a very long time, probably since his early days with the Cavs, in which LeBron James was sitting at home in late April or early May, having to watch the postseason just like the rest of us. It was the first time in well over 15 years where LeBron James and I had the same scoring average in an NBA postseason. And he wants to make sure this does not become a regular thing here, because I think by most people's standards, just outsiders looking in, most feel that his time with the Lakers has been more about off-the-court stuff than it has been the on-the-court stuff, especially when you consider, fair or unfair, what happened in the bubble probably does not happen if we did not have, a once-in-a-lifetime world, epidemic taking place before our hands. We've seen during his run with the Lakers, LeBron James has had a hard time getting through a season. Anthony Davis, for as young as he is, for whatever the reasons may be that no one could seem to figure out, has had a hard time getting through a regular season. And in all likelihood, if they didn't have that 4 months off there, they probably don't make it through an NBA season unscathed. They were able to rest, recuperate for 4 months. Everyone else had that same thing, but they came in locked and loaded, motivated, whereas you look around the rest of the league, it didn't feel like a lot of teams actually truly wanted to be there. Maybe the Celtics, maybe the Heat as well, but you didn't see a lot of motivation or over-excitement by a lot of the players in this league. That's why so many of them, whether it be for their own personal safety or for their family safeties, chose to opt out of the bubble. And why we've seen in the last couple of years since then, now you have not had a fully locked and loaded LeBron James and Anthony Davis heading into the postseason. And Anthony Davis practically limped into the postseason 2 years ago. That's why they exited early against the Suns. And last year, due to injuries, both LeBron and AD, they fell apart down the stretch and were left at home like the rest of us for the playoffs. And as we sit here right now, the Lakers are in the 12th spot in the Western Conference. Now, as we know, 10 teams make it. Teams 7 through 10 will play a play-in scenario. But the Lakers have set this goal for themselves of not just making the playoffs, but avoiding the play-in. They've set a goal for themselves of saying that we want to be, this, at minimum, the 6th seed in the Western Conference playoffs. That's not an unreasonable goal to set when you consider there's only about a 3.5 game difference between them and the 4th spot, the Phoenix Suns, who, they're lucky that Kevin Durant is coming at some point. Otherwise, they look like just kind of an average team, with Chris Paul getting older before our eyes, Devin Booker dealing with some injuries in his own right this year, and then some of the depth that they have traded away along the way. But the problem for the Lakers is you have so many teams to jump over to get to that goal. You have Portland, who is being dragged, kicked, and screaming on a nightly basis by Damian Lillard. You have the New Orleans Pelicans, who, quite frankly, I don't know what to expect from this team on a night-in, night-out basis. I mean, can Zion Williamson get his ass on the court at some point? This is why people complain about his weight on his body, having 290 pounds on a 6'6" body. You cannot play in the NBA at that height looking like you were an NFL linebacker. You have the Timberwolves, who are a feisty team. The Jazz, who, let's face it, after a quick start to the season, it feels like, they're trying to tank to get that first overall pick. And then there's the Golden State Warriors, who have been 5-5 over the last 10 and are just kind of treading water until they can get Steph Curry back in the mix here. But in that final 23 games, now 21 games, most have looked at it and said that, okay, they have to go somewhere between 16-7 and 17-6 to get that spot. But there's definitely going to be some minefields to navigate along the way here, because while it does help that of these final 21 games, 12 of them are at home. Technically 13 of them are at home, considering one of their 9 road games is against the Clippers, and you figure that's going to be mostly a Lakers crowd there that night. You look at, they'll have 2 stretches where they have 5-game homestands, but they still have 3 back-to-backs left, and all of those back-to-backs are on the road. And starting with tonight against the Grizzlies and tomorrow at OKC. And can you really expect, with the recent history of injuries to both LeBron and KD, for them to get through this safe and sound? Can you truly expect that there is going to be no hiccups? Because the Lakers have put themselves in a position where there is no room for margin of error. There is no room for saying, oh, we can go through a 3-game losing streak and still be fine. They've backed themselves into a corner. That's why it's very important that they came out of this All-Star break winning a couple of games here and starting to get the motor running toward that goal. Now, taking advantage of the Steph-less Warriors on Thursday night. And then yesterday, arguably the most impressive win of the season. I mean, teams were 0-138 this year when trailing by 27 points at any point in a game. And they were able to will and work their way back against the Mavericks when you consider the Mavericks couldn't miss a 3 seemingly in that first half, while the Lakers weren't doing anything outside the paint. LeBron James had an injury scare in the third quarter where he said he heard a pop in his right ankle. Even though he was able to get up and run it off, he's already dealing with a left foot issue. And how hot Luca came out of the gates, but Luca seemingly faded after that first quarter. And you got to give a lot of credit to James Vanderbilt. And people want to throw bouquets and roses at the performances of LeBron and AD. And yesterday was arguably the most dominant version of AD we've seen this year. But James Vanderbilt really had Luka Doncic frustrated throughout the rest of the game there. And, it does help when you're trying to come back from that kind of deficit. It does help that you're playing against the team that does not want to play any defense whatsoever. I mean, Luka Doncic, the next time he plays defense, it will be breaking news across the bottom line on ESPN. Kyrie Irving kind of half-asses it on defense as well. So it does help in that case, but you got to give a lot of credit to this Lakers team, especially when you consider they have not been together for very long. I mean, you think about it. Not many teams would just break apart their roster outside of their big 2 and recollect in the way that they did mid-season and do it seamlessly as they've have. And like I said, it was going to have to come across seamless when you consider the lack of margin of error that they've put themselves here in. But the problem is if they want to get to this goal they have of the 6th seed, which, let's face it, it's not about avoiding the play-in. It's not about avoiding a scenario where you got to win the 9-10 matchup just to get to the loser of the 7-8 matchup to make it in the playoffs. No. For them, this is all about avoiding the likes of the Nuggets and the Grizzlies in the first round of the playoffs if they are so fortunate to get there. For them, this is about getting a first-round matchup against the Sacramento Kings, who Mike Brown has done a fantastic job coaching that team this year. Sabonis has been awesome for them. That team with Fox and all those young guys has played with a life to it, has played with an energy to it that really makes you believe that they are going to end this postseason drought that they've had for the last 16, 17 years here. So, but the Lakers, with all the accolades and accomplishments of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, with Darvin Ham and how he's had to work different lineup arrangements this year, they still look down on the Kings as, just being the Kings, being almost the New York Jets of the NBA. And they're saying to themselves, oh, we get to the 6th spot, play them in the first round, we can make some noise in the postseason because then we can avoid Memphis or Denver until the second round and possibly put more pressure on them having to face us in the second round, where there will be a lot of pressure on Denver with Jokic looking like a favorite to be third consecutive MVP, or on Memphis, who, like we've talked about before, does a lot of yapping, does a lot of talking for a team that hasn't exactly won anything yet. But it's going to be tough for the Lakers to navigate to that spot, not just with the 3 road back-to-backs I mentioned, but you look at, they have teams ahead of them. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 7 teams ahead of them for that spot, for that opportunity, and they play Dallas one more time. They play the Pelicans one more time. They have 2 against the Timberwolves, 1 against Golden State, but depending on when that is, the Golden State will probably have Steph Curry back. They get 2 against the Thunder, and then 2 against the Jazz late, where, as I said, the Jazz are falling apart, but none against the Portland Trailblazers. So it is a difficult road. It's a difficult task for this team to ask. I mean, I would never doubt LeBron James if he sets his mind to anything. We know what he can accomplish. I'm just not sure, can they stay healthy? Because they can't give these guys maintenance nights. Even if it is, against Oklahoma City or Houston or Utah. Teams like that can be feisty. Teams like that could say, all right, you're going to disrespect us like this. We're going to come out and give it our best shot. And on a night in, night out basis, as we've seen in sports, anyone can defeat anyone. So the Lakers, to get to that goal, have got to be perfect from here on out. And I don't know if Davis and LeBron are going to be able to stay healthy enough, even with the injuries LeBron is already dealing with. All right, I got a lot I want to talk about today. Give you some thoughts on things coming up with the NFL free agency, especially when it pertains to Lamar Jackson, the Jets, the Giants. Mix in some hockey talk, but a big trade that took place yesterday that put a smile on yours truly's face, as well as, got to give some early thoughts on the new pitch clock rule in Major League Baseball and some of the complaints I see taking place with that. So a lot to get to through the next about 45 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me this week. So please, as I tell you each and every week at this time, please sit back, relax, put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
As I mentioned before, the Lakers had arguably the best win of the season across the league yesterday, coming back from down 27 in the middle of the second quarter, seemingly lifeless, having no offense outside of the paint. But every time there is a big comeback and like that, not just NBA, NFL, you also have to look at the other side of things and look at why the comeback happened. And the Dallas Mavericks, it wasn't just on the defensive end of things they choked this game away, but offensively they became kind of stupid with how they were playing because they got off to such a great start from behind the 3-point arc. They shot 12 for 23 in the first half. But for the rest of the game, they were 8 for 26. Finished in kind of 20 for 49 from 3. And you just were making stupid plays as the game went on. Like late in the game, you're down by a point, have a chance to come back and win the game after the Lakers worked their way back in this, were able to take the lead late. But there was the miscommunication between Kyrie Irving and Luca Doncic on the inbound play. Like I said, they were not playing very good defense on the Lakers at all, and Luca went somewhat quiet after what was a strong first quarter. And Jason Kidd had one of those moments that only maybe once or twice a year as a head coach can you really, how should I say it, put your foot up the team's rear end and give them a somewhat chewing out through the media after the game. The more times than not, these coaches give the politically correct answers, but Jason Kidd was pretty hard on his team when he said, quote, "We have to grow up if we want to win a championship." And to me, that's kind of sending a message to Luca. Keep your head in the game, not, always getting frustrated. Because how often have we seen Luca Doncic after plays or after a call getting into it with referees? He's always chirping with the referees, always whining to these officials, and that's never going to get you anywhere. At some point, you've got to just not let that get the best of you. You've got to, at some point, just kill out all the noise there and just say, all right, I'm not getting the calls my way tonight. To hell with it. I've still got to go out there and give my team the best shot, because if I get frustrated, it's going to affect my game and it's going to affect our team's chances. Because in that first half, normally when Luca goes to the bench, you see the Mavericks offense die and go quietly, but they were still going strong with how well they were shooting the 3-point ball, but they fell in love with that too much, and their poor defense that we see time and time again from this team came back and bit them. And now they are sitting in a spot there where they are 6th in the West, but very easily could fall into that play-in scenario if the Lakers were to get on some kind of run, or any of these teams. I mean, you look at it, like I said, it is the top 2 or 3 in the Western Conference have kind of separated themselves from the pack. I know Sacramento still has only a 3-game advantage on Phoenix for the 3 spot, and Phoenix is going to be getting Kevin Durant here, not in the not too distant future. But you look at it between where the Oklahoma City Thunder are at 13 and where the Suns are at 4, there's only a 4-game difference in the games back column. Hell, it's a 3-game difference in the loss column when it comes to OKC and Phoenix. So a good week here or there could drive you up, and a bad week could drive you down. The Mavericks have a clunker of a week coming up. They could find themselves easily in the play-in scenario. And you look at it, after playing the Pacers tomorrow night, a game that they better win now, you've got 2 tough back-to-back games coming up with both Philadelphia and Phoenix. Yeah, in your building, but two teams that look at Dallas now probably saying to themselves after that performance on Sunday, oh yeah, we can beat them. Especially the fact that with Joel Embiid for the Sixers and then maybe Durant and Aiden for the Suns, Dallas can't match them size-wise. And they're going to keep playing that kind of crappy perimeter defense. Those teams are going to be licking their chops. Now, with all that going on, we had another, remarkable performance taking place last night by a guy that, let's face it, it's a crime how, I don't want to say disrespected, because I think most fans and most in the media acknowledge how great this guy is, but criminally underpromoted, under-recognized this guy goes at times. Because Dame Lillard, yeah, you could say it was against the Houston Rockets, but that was an unbelievable performance by him last night. And not unbelievable that he did it, but just that it keeps happening in NBA games, that we see teams not able to adjust and realize that, hey, anybody but him kind of scenario. But then again, Houston, we kind of know what their motivation is as an organization this season. But Damian Lillard, on all facets, was on fire last night. You're watching this go on. He had 41 in the first half, seemingly was making shots from all over the court, becoming the eighth player, in NBA history to put up 70 in a game. And then you look at his last 20 games he's played since early January. He's averaging about 39 points a game, shooting over 50% from the field, 40% from 3. And in those 20 games, the Trailblazers kind of wasted his greatness, because he's had 9 games of 40-plus points, including a 50-burger against the Cavs on January 12th, 60 against the Jazz on the January 25th. And in that time, the Trailblazers are only 10-10. Listen, I know this guy is loyal. This guy, he loves that area. That team took a chance on him with the 3rd overall pick when most people didn't even know who the hell he was coming out of college. And they have been greatly rewarded by getting to witness greatness for this last decade. But at some point, I wish, for his own sake, he would just say, get me the hell out of there. Well, his loyalty to that area should be respected, should be admired, and he doesn't want to be one of these guys that, like Kevin Durant or like some of the other stars in the league, like Kyrie Irving, like James Harden, that are always trying to force their way out of a situation, always looking for greener pasture, not wanting to be the ultimate ring chaser. There's something admirable about that. I'd love to see this kid, and I say kid, he's only 2 years younger than me. I'd love to see this guy get a shot at an NBA title. They came close years back, but they always ran into the Warriors in the postseason, and that was always their kryptonite. I just wish he had another type A personality star to be by his side and really have a shot at things. We as NBA fans deserve, and he more so than anybody in this league deserves to be in the playoffs, and not just in the play-in scenario, a 7-game series. So that even if his team goes out in 6 games, we could say we got to watch greatness for those 6 games. That's what you turn on the TV every night to watch. Greatness. Hope for greatness. Expect greatness. Look forward to remarkable and amazing things. Any given night in this sport, you get performances like this by some of these guys. And Dame Lillard, for the last 20 games especially, has been that guy. For the last 20 games, it has been Dame time on a completely different level. Now, got to give some credit to the Knicks here, who have gotten off to a good start in the second half of their season, or the final third of their season, should we say, getting 2 wins here coming out of the All-Star break, especially Friday night. Looked like they had no energy or lacked motivation against Washington. The Wizards were unconscious from behind the three-point arc in that first half. Got a team that doesn't typically shoot the three-point ball that well. They were 11 for 19 in the first half, but finished a measly 8 for 25. And the Knicks, they were just kind of patient here. They realized that the game wasn't a sprint; it was a marathon. That if they just hung around, they would give themselves a shot at winning this, even with it being a off shooting night for Jalen Brunson. He, at the end, turned out to be a hero with the go-ahead layup in the remaining seconds. Randall, from the beginning, came out on fire and really dragged this team back in the game. And it was their work in the paint that allowed them to get back in this. Outscoring the Wiz by 26 in the paint, taking advantage of the fact that the Wizards have a 7-footer who all he cares about is shooting 3-point balls. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Kristaps Porzingis. Show a little bit of toughness and stop being so finesse on the inside. Fight for those second chance opportunities. That's why you see these comebacks happen. Stupid things or lack of basketball IQ plays from the opposition. But what can you expect? It's the Washington Wizards for you. And there's another case of a star, Bradley Beal, wasting his time, wasting his career there where he could be somewhere else being a ring chaser. And Beal and Lillard, they seem like they'd be a perfect match for each other because both of these guys want to win, but they are loyal to a fault, for God's sakes. And after a comeback win like that, you always worry about the hangover effect, but they came back the next night, got a little bit of motivation from seeing the Garden crowd celebrating the 50th anniversary of their 1973 championship team, and left no doubts against the Pelicans. Never trailed in this game. And the Pelicans, like I said earlier, can Zion Williamson just get back on the court? They were a fun story in the beginning of the year, and they've started to creep down to the point where they may not even make the play-in now without him. He's been out since January 2nd, and now has had a re-aggravation of this injury in his workouts recently. But the Knicks have taken advantage of that, given them a lot of credit, and now they've got a big week coming up here, because this is a week, almost a prove-it week, a show-me week, that these games weren't flukes, that these games, they are serious about making the playoffs. Not just being a team that's happy to be in the play-in scenario, actually make the playoffs. They've got the Celtics twice tonight at home, and then next Sunday up in Boston. And between now and then, they've got the new-look Brooklyn Nets, which I never know what to expect out of that team on a night-in, night-out basis, and a Miami Heat team that seems like they're content where they are in the standings and is more so just trying to get themselves ready for the playoffs. Because the Heat, because of the Knicks, or the Nets, being without any stars and becoming kind of a developing team now, I think the Heat are going to push their way back into being in one of those top 6 playoff spots, and the Nets are going to kind of fall by the wayside and be at best a play-in team. I don't think they're going to fall all the way enough for the Chicago Bulls to catch them and knock them out, but I don't think they're going to be guaranteed one of the top 6 spots. But the Heat are an interesting team, because what they sometimes lack in talent outside of Jimmy Butler, they make up for in heart, intensity, and great coaching with Eric Spoelstra. So this is a big week for the Knicks to show that these last 2 games were not flukes and that they are really ready to go and committed for the remainder of this season. All right, going to make a transition now. Transition over to the NFL after a quick break, because starting to get interesting here with some of these quarterback scenarios, and look at how they also could affect our 2 local teams here. Plus, I got some thoughts coming up on the MLB pitch clock rules. So a lot still to get to. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
About a year ago, when the Cleveland Browns made the trade to get Deshaun Watson, there was fear of scenarios like what we're seeing right now in the league take place. And what I mean by that is, if you remember, originally Deshaun Watson was not going to accept a trade to Cleveland, because it was once said by Joakim Noah, oh so famously, when he was with the Chicago Bulls, oh, what's so great about Cleveland? When do you ever hear someone say, oh, I want to go to Cleveland on vacation? To entice him to accept the trade, to entice him to want to be the next Browns quarterback, they altered his contract in a few ways. One, gave him a $1 million base salary for this year when they knew he was going to be suspended, so he didn't lose too much money. And 2, they made that 5-year, $230 million contract 100% guaranteed. And as expected, a lot of teams in the league cringed at that. A lot of teams in the league feared that, knowing that the quarterbacks in the future would want that same kind of deal, would want that same kind of money thrown at them. Well, it's happening, and it's the Baltimore Ravens' worst nightmare, because Lamar Jackson wants 5 years, $250 million, fully guaranteed. And the Baltimore Ravens are only offering him 5 years for $230 with $133 guaranteed. And this looks like, on the surface, unless there is some kind of major change in the difference between the two sides, unless they can somehow meet in the middle here, or the Ravens just caved to Lamar's demands, looks like they're heading for a divorce. And a divorce that some have seen coming for the last 2 years, because for 2 years now, they've been trying to lock him up to a contract extension. It's been Lamar that has been delaying, putting it off till the last possible moment. And this is where him not having an agent becomes the gift and also the problem. Becomes the gift because he doesn't he knows at all times what the negotiations are, what's being said, what's being told right to his face. But also, he's got to constantly answer questions about it. And he's also, well, athletes say, oh, I'm not thinking about that stuff. I'm just worried about playing my game. I'm worried about making sure I'm there for my teammates. You know, in the back of these guys' minds, they're always concerned, always worried about making it to that point, making sure they don't have that debilitating injury that could cost them that big payday, that could cost them that contract. And as great as Lamar has been, the first 3 years, especially of his time with Baltimore, were fantastic. He was a human highlight reel with almost 90 combined touchdowns through the air and on the ground, and making all of his starts. The last 2 years, you've seen him deal with late season injuries that have cost him the final 5 games of the season each of the last 2 years, whether it be with his ankle last year or his knee this past season. And you've seen the Ravens cave in like a cheap tent without him. But at the same time, this has been one of the most well-run organizations over the last 20 years, not just in the NFL, but across sports. No matter who their quarterback has been, they've been able to stay afloat because they've had very good coaching for the last decade plus with John Harbaugh there. At the same time, though, they have catered this entire team to Lamar Jackson. They have built this roster based on his abilities, what traits he's great at. And now they would have to, if they moved on from him, would have to completely scrap that and build things toward, the more traditional mobile quarterback where, yeah, you still give him protection, but it's not more built around your tight ends and your running backs, more so built around, athletic, strong-bodied wide receivers that can win the 50-50 balls down the field. But like I said, it feels like this is heading for divorce because they're not going to just let him walk into free agency. He's going to have some version of the franchise tag placed on him, whether it's the exclusive tag or the non-exclusive tag. But it's going to be interesting to see who from that list of, 13, 14 teams I mentioned last week is going to be jumping to the head of the line to get him. I don't think that they wouldn't trade him to an AFC team, so you can rule out teams like the Jets, the Tennessee Titans, the Miami Dolphins, because you don't want to see him coming back and potentially facing you in not just a regular season game, but possibly a postseason game in the future. I also don't think that they would trade him to the Washington Commanders due to the close proximity between the two teams, even though the Commanders would probably hand over every first-round draft pick they have between now and 2030 to get him, since they've been trying to figure out the quarterback position for years. But, a team could potentially, the Giants, be in the mix here? Could they possibly be looking at this when you consider the fact that Daniel Jones may not want to play ball in the ballpark that they're offering him? Now that he wasn't their first round pick, and Joe Sheehan and Brian Daboll see this shiny toy out there that can expedite their rebuilding process or their remolding of this team faster than anyone expected. And could they be willing to fork over 2 first-round picks or possibly even 3 first-round picks to go get this guy, even though they do have some definite needs on this team? Have to add a wide receiver, have to add an upgrade or 2 on the offensive line. Still got to figure out what the hell they're doing with Saquon Barkley, have to make improvements at linebacker spot. But could this be a road that the Giants are willing to go down? Say, Daniel Jones wants $35, $40 million a year. We're not going to pay him that. But we'll give that to Lamar Jackson. Because Lamar Jackson, as great respect as I have for Eli Manning, for everything he's done, Lamar Jackson, talent-wise, would be the best quarterback the Giants have ever had. At least the best quarterback that they've had, since the Phil Simms era, and probably better than Phil Simms as well. Because this past year the Giants were a cute story, but you can't be cute story 2 years in a row. Now there's expectations. There's expectations to be better than you were the year before. And while it may hurt Giant fans after the fun year Daniel Jones had, or being that Saquon Barkley was their own draft pick, it may hurt them to see those guys go away. If you get Lamar Jackson here and then can find a cheaper but just as good option in the draft to replace Barkley with, then you've become an attractive destination for players around the league. Players will want to come play for Lamar. Players see what Brian Daboll is doing, and they'll want to come play for a coach like this. So that this is an interesting opportunity that I think the Giants have here that they need to look into. Now, they are going to have to make some changes when it comes to their cap situation. Now, they only have, for this to work out, they only have $44 million, a little over that, in total cap space. That's right now the 3rd most in the league. And they do have 21 unrestricted free agents. And a way that you help make that change is obviously some of the cuts you make, and you got to rework Leonard Williams' contract. How the hell does this guy have a $32 million cap hit for next year? I mean, that is the final, kind of middle finger that Dave Gettleman gave to this franchise on the way out. Overspending on Leonard Williams' best career year of his entire career. Being fooled by that. Because Leonard Williams is a good player, but he is not one of the elite defensive tackles in this sport. He is not someone that you should be paying like he's Aaron Donald. It's like he's got to take a pay cut if he wants to remain here. And if the Giants want to make some of these improvements, these suggested improvements, like taking the chance, the go all in chance, and go for a Lamar Jackson. And the Jets are also looking at the potential go all in scenario, because as we know, they've been hunting down potentially a veteran quarterback for this team. That's been their main goal going into this offseason. But a Jets legend and soon-to-be Hall of Famer, Joe Klecko, doesn't like the road that they're potentially going down. Because let's face it, they could talk about how great a meeting they had with Derek Carr, how much he'd fit in here, how they think he'd be a Hall of Famer here and lead them to a Super Bowl. But all of that comes off as window dressing. All of that comes off as posturing to me, at least for right now. And I do believe in a way he's using the Jets as well as posturing, as a negotiating tactic with a team that he potentially would really want to go to. Because why on earth would he not be signed by the Jets yet, or at least be given an offer yet by the Jets, if they truly believed all of that? And that reason, of course, is Aaron Rodgers. And Joe Klecko, unlike most people, does not like that idea, does not like that potential fit for the New York Jets, as he thinks it would ruin the Jets' locker room. He doesn't think Rodgers would fit in with the young guys. He was telling this to Zach Gelbs on CBS Sports Radio last week, saying, quote, "I don't think Rodgers is a fit with the young guys." I related this to myself when we came up as a young team when we started winning. Why was it a good fit for all of us? Was because we all worked together and all came up together. I've watched Rodgers over the years. He's a great player. You don't become an MVP 3 times without doing what he's done. When he did have the perfect arrangement with receivers and the line, his attitude was condescending somewhat to players. Wilson won Offensive Rookie of the Year. I can't see him coming back to the huddle and Rodgers lambasting him for running the wrong route. It's not going to fit. I don't see it. And Tiki Barber on his radio show on CBS Sports Radio followed up with that and thought that Aaron Rodgers' attitude, sometimes his selfishness will get people upset. And yes, it is as risky a thing you could do. That is for sure. But as Jets fans, as a Jets organization, don't you have no choice but to see this through and no choice but to take that chance? Because I'm not saying that he's going to change from his condescending, narcissish mindset and how when he talks at times, he comes off as I'm smarter than everyone else kind of person. But when you're a Jets franchise that has not been in the playoffs in 12 years, has only been in the playoffs 10 times in your franchise's history, and has never truly had what is considered an elite among the elite quarterbacks, a guy that in all likelihood is going to finish his career as being considered one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. Don't you got to take that risk? Don't you got to take that chance? Now, where it comes back and blows up in your face is if either he gets hurt in the first couple of weeks of the season and you have to go back to Zach Wilson, or if you trade multiple first-round picks away from him and he decides to retire after next year. To me, I do think some of his wishy-washiness each year about playing or retiring has been kind of taking a shot at the Packers organization, still being annoyed at for drafting Jordan Love years back and not giving him more wide receiver help and allowing Devontae Adams to walk out the door. But if I'm the Jets, as many cautions, as many warning flags, as many red flags as there is, I got to take this shot. I got to at least take that opportunity, because you have a youngish team here that's not going to be young forever. And you have a all-time great quarterback that is looking for a new opportunity. And that new opportunity should be with Gang Green. Yeah, you get more years out of Derek Carr. And yeah, I would love for Derek Carr to be the Jets quarterback. And to me, that is at minimum what the Jets quarterback should be next year. I don't want to hear about Tannehill, Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, none of that. It's if it's not Rodgers, it's Carr. But to me, the answer should be Aaron Rodgers. The Jets have not earned the right to be wishy-washy, have not earned the right to say, oh, we got to care more about culture here, care about the fit here. You have an opportunity. This is one of those times I've said it. Just say F it and go for it. Take that shot. And we'll see if in the coming weeks they decide to take that shot. Going to take one final break here, come back on the other side and talk about what everyone's been up in arms about over this past weekend, and that is the new pitch clock rule in Major League Baseball. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Over the weekend, yours truly actually got his final Christmas gift from last December as I went with my sisters to see Devils Flyers up at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, and all the way around, it was a phenomenal night. Started off with them honoring the 20-year anniversary of their 2003 Stanley Cup championship team, and pretty much the entire team was there, especially the core guys when you think about that team. Ken Danico, Scott Stevens, Scott Niedermayer, Patrick Elias, and of course Martin Brodeur, Mike Rupp, everyone from that team, all of the top guys that you think of those great Devil teams was there, and really fired up the crowd there, fired up that team, and went out and took no prisoners against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers, who I know they're dealing with some injuries right now, but they're just an atrocious hockey team. How many times was Akira Schmidt just stopping them right at the line? They seemingly had no shot against the Devils, didn't belong on the same ice as the Devils on Saturday night, and the Devils, took the hammer right to them and continued what has been a surprisingly great season. I say surprisingly because everyone knew they had a lot of talent coming into this year, a lot of young talent. But the question was, were they going to get enough goaltending? And were this young talent, was this group of young players ready to take that next step? Especially because they didn't make that big move in the offseason. Their hope was to bring in Johnny Gaudreau, but he spurned them and went to Columbus, and look at how that's turned out for both sides. But the Devils have had this great year and have made this great year looking even better because, you have teams ahead of them in the standings. You have teams ahead of them for where they want to be on top of the Eastern Conference, with the Bruins just being unconscious this year and the Hurricanes having a game at hand and a 3-point edge over the Devils in the Metropolitan. But the Devils have been looking to make a big move leading into this Friday's trade deadline and got that big move, made that big splash when they completed the trade that has been rumored about for weeks now that has been speculated about, that fans had craved about, and that they were viewed as the favorites for in getting forward Timo Meier from the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, who are in a rebuilding mode and need to clear some cap and had to move on from their 26-year-old forward. And you got to give the Devils general manager, Tom Fitzgerald, a lot of credit here, because my biggest concern in this trade, whenever you make a trade, it's like, yeah, we're getting something nice back, but what are we giving up? You know that you got to give up something to get something. But if you look at this trade on the surface, you look at it and you're like, did San Jose only do this for cap cutting measures to clear up some roster space? Because it does not look like they got a lot back in this. When you see in total there are 10 players changing hands here. 6 coming, or 9 players, excuse me. 5 coming to the Devils and 4 leaving the organization and going to the San Jose Sharks. The Devils also will get back a couple of defensemen, including Scott Harrington and a couple of minor leaguers, as well as a 5th-round draft pick for 2024. But to get Meier, they gave up a couple of defensemen. They gave up Fabian Zutterlund, who really, of the 4 players they gave up here, was the only guy that had significant time with this team this year. Andres Johansson was up for a couple of games, but really didn't do much. They give up a conditional 1st-round draft pick in 2023 and a 2nd and 7th-round draft pick in 2024. They didn't have to give up any of their top prospects, including Luke Hughes, Alexander Holtz, Simon Nikomek, and the important one there of those prospects is Alexander Holtz, because now we're getting Meier. You have a scenario here where he's due for a $10 million arbitration signing this coming offseason, and the Devils are going to look into trying to do something long-term with him, try to do something creative there. But in all likelihood, they're only going to be able to sign one of either him or Jasper Bratt. They've been trying to sign Jasper Bratt for about 2 years now and have not been able to complete an extension with him. With keeping Alexander Holtz, that in all likelihood means that they view him as a potential replacement for letting Bratt go as a free agent, as well as re-signing Meier here, who they're going to have under team control for this year and also next year. And they did all of this not just without giving up any of those prospects, but got to hold on to a young emerging center on this team in Dawson Mercer, who you've seen in the last month has really started to take off and become one of the better players on this team. Especially the last 6 games, he's got 8 goals. He's become a popular player amongst these fans and a guy that we've watched develop before our eyes. So got to give Fitzgerald a lot of credit here. Realizing that this team has a shot not just to go for it this year, but for many years to come here. And that's what a move here like this does. This isn't, the Rangers potentially trading for Patrick Kane, a guy who's in the second half of his career. No, Meier has plenty of years left to go here, has plenty of tread left on those tires here, and you're adding them to a team that was already one of the top scoring teams in this league. Could get better at scoring on power plays, but is top 10 on defense when you consider they barely allow 2.5 goals a game, are are not allowing too many shots per game, only about 28 per game. And that they've been very good all season on the penalty kill. I mean, a move like this and not having to give up anyone major from the club really injects a shot of energy, not to just this roster, but also this fan base. I was very, very pleased when I saw this yesterday afternoon, and has got me even more excited for what's going to be a fun run down the stretch here for the Devils as they head into the playoffs and hopefully have a great shot at winning their first cup in 20 years. Unsurprised about that as I was a little bit surprised by the Manny Machado extension with the San Diego Padres. I know he was saying that he was going to opt out after this year, made the joke last week of saying, oh, you see the price of eggs these days. But I figured that he was going to reach free agency and try and test the market. But the Padres were like, this guy's been too great of a player for us these first 3.5 years. In all of the full seasons he's played, I exclude the pandemic season, all of the seasons he's played at least 150 games, has been an all-star in 2 of them, was a runner-up to the NL MVP last year, Paul Goldschmidt, and provides them something that you see in very few star players, with the ability to play him at both third and short on either days Fernando Tatis has off, or when he's suspended or injured for doing something stupid in the off season. But the Padres are showing up all of these small market teams. They're showing up all of these cheap owners out there for these clubs like the Rays and the Pirates that are saying, oh, it's too expensive to compete. Well, clearly it's not for the Padres, because somehow, some way, A.J. Preller has not just built an unlimited stack of minor league prospects there, but he's been able to get front office, he's been able to get ownership to supply them with the cash to sign all of these players. You know, not just a second $300 million contract for Machado, but the $300 million contract they gave to Tatis for 14 years a couple years ago, giving $280 to Xander Bogaerts earlier this year, locking up Yu Darvish to a 6-year, $120 million contract extension, giving Joe Musgrove 5 years for $100 million. Now, at some point, there's only so many guys you can give 9 figures to, and you wonder how much money they really have in the bag. I mean, even Steve Cohen has said that there's a limit to his spending, surprisingly. And this all blows up in their face if they don't win a championship. But they've definitely put themselves in the best opportunity with being able to keep a lot of their star players. Now, Manny Machado did have the unfortunate task of being the first person to fail Major League Baseball's new rule over the weekend. Of course, I'm talking about the pitch clock rule, which many people have not truly understood or comprehended. Yeah, the pitcher with bases empty has 15 seconds to throw the baseball, but the batter, there's also a potential violation against them because they have to be in the batter's box readily staring at the pitcher with 8 seconds remaining. Otherwise, there will be an automatic strike called against them. Machado was the first one that had that called against them. And we've seen scenarios where innings and even games have ended on strike 3 calls because the batter was not looking at the pitcher on time. And quite frankly, I love this rule. You're already seeing it play dividends here because last year the average game was 3 hours and 1 minute. So far through 30-plus spring training games, the average time is 2 hours, 37 minutes. And that's telling when you consider every inning or two, they're changing pitchers. These pitchers, the starters, are not built up to go 6-7 innings yet, and you're using a lot of relievers to get through these games. But you're still seeing a lot of offense take place in these games. Last year, there was an average of 10 runs scored per game. So far through spring training, there's been 12 runs scored per game. And what this does, it cuts down on a lot of the nonsense. You don't need to see the relievers walking around the mound in between pitches taking a full minute. You don't need to see the batter, when he's hasn't even swung the bat, step out of the batter's box after a pitch and relace his gloves or fix his jock strap. No, that kind of nonsense, that kind of wasted time, wasted space is what made baseball slow, made it boring. I'm not asking for every game to be where it's Roy Halladay versus Mark Burley and you're going out there and playing a 2-hour and 25-minute game. No, that's not what I'm asking for. Just cut it down on the dead time. Cut down on situations where you just have the fielders standing around. And that's another thing here. You increase the pace here, that's going to keep these fielders on their feet. That's going to keep them awake, keep them in the mix of the game here. Not just having them standing around chewing bubble gum, spitting out seeds, wondering when this pitcher is ever going to throw a pitch or when the batter is ever going to stand in the box here. The players, they did this to themselves by, creating all of this nonsense here. And to me, this is a rule that is just going to pay dividends. You can have a 3-hour, 30-minute game that has a lot of action, that has a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. It's not about the time of the game that I was ever concerned about. It was the pace. It was the snooze fest in between pitches that it had become that just could not continue. And baseball used to be America's pastime, and now it's sunk down to the third sport in this country. You needed to get something to excite the fans that could increase action here. And between this and the elimination of the defensive shift, I think are going to do that. I think you're going to see more eyeballs on TV sets. I think you're going to see ratings go up, more enjoyment and more excitement around the game now that we're actually making the batters get in the box and be ready, and the pitchers throw the ball in a timely manner. Is it going to take some time to adjust to? Yeah. But at least they're doing it in spring training. They're doing it now and not having them cold turkey do it at the start of a season, which to me, like I said, it's only going to increase the not just pace of play, but also the excitement of play in this game. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, February 27th, 2023. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy, relatively uneventful week. And I'll talk to you guys again same time next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody. I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.